Prelude to this video. Unfortunately, I have tried a new hair product in my hair today, and as such, I have ended up looking like some sort of 1950s style slicked back. I don't know what you'd call this, but let's address the hair and just admit we tried and we failed. Before we begin this video, I want to thank everybody who got in touch with messages of support on Friday's video, because I was feeling a bit overwhelmed about my writing and the amount of books behind me. I will say that that video was filmed on Wednesday last week, so I have had about 5 days away from YouTube, away from properly interacting with people. I haven't been watching as many videos, and I have been spending more time focused on my reading to try and get the stack of books behind me down. Therefore, I'm feeling more relaxed today, more calm, and I just want to address that video and say that I am aware that I am actually somewhat entitled in that video, because I know that worrying about my writing and being overwhelmed about not getting so much written and not getting so much read and being awarded this free time, I know that there are people still going out to work, like my mother and my sister and even my dad and brother who are going off farming. There are still people going out to work, there are still people putting their lives at risk, and I am at home, for want of better words, doing nothing. Nothing that is actually contributing to helping other people or making the world better in any way. And so I'm aware that I'm safe as well in my own home, whilst, you know, the worry is still there of perhaps catching this virus one day. I don't think that Friday or the current time was the best time to put that video out, and I would just like to maybe apologise for the time I chose to release that video, because there is so much other stuff people ought to be worrying about now, and that I ought to be thinking about, rather than getting het up over not achieving as much with the time I've been given. But as I say, thank you to everybody who did send me that support, and I suggest that I will get on with the video now. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and my hair is getting longer now. Today I don't plan on talking about anything more than nonsense that has gone over the last week whilst I have been at home doing nothing. I'm going to make this last as long as possible. Today is my mother's birthday. This morning I got up, I washed up, I've showered, I got my hair did by myself, and Lord, can you tell this looks very homemade. This looks like what my grandfather's hair looked like in the 1950s, early 60s. Only he was a lot thinner than I am, so he, you know, it looked like he could pull it off. I feel like some sort of smarmy beggar right now. I'm not going to try and fix it for this video because I have other things to be getting on with. So I've washed up, I've made a cake, I've showered, I've got ready. I've not done any reading yet, but I did practice my Italian. I've got onto the questions part of Duolingo, and I won't lie to you, it's very difficult for me to figure out the questions in Italian, and so I'm doing a lot of practicing. A video popped up on YouTube yesterday saying how I learned Italian in 1 month, and I thought I could watch this, but there's every chance that what this person's going to say is either going to be another advertisement for Hello Talk, which I've heard people are actually using more like a different type of Tinder now, and people, as with everything, certain types of men are getting on there and harassing women, just doing it in other languages now. Some poor sod goes on there wanting to learn French, and instead she's being accosted in her own language. Fortunately, a lot of European countries do actually teach their children English. Unfortunately, until I was due to leave school, a foreign language didn't become so much of the norm, and I still regret not continuing with my French studies after the age of 13. What has my last week been like? After I recorded that last video on Wednesday, I edited the videos, I uploaded them on Wednesday night with the idea that I was feeling a certain type of way, so I could relax and I could rest and I could just focus on reading. So that's exactly what I did. As you can probably tell, the stack of books behind me has reduced considerably, and that isn't because I have been throwing them out for once. What I did was I chose to read a ton of the shorter books that were over here and do nothing but read. I have read 15 books in the last week, and that has been because I focused on the incredibly short books, the books that are 300 pages or less. I've had poetry collections in there, graphic novels that I had downloaded on my Kindle, and I'm just trying to get through all the shorter books, which will leave me with some of these huge tomes, but then that will alleviate this sensation of guilt inside me. I have got some books over here that I pulled aside for May's TBR because I'm planning on participating in the Asian Readathon, and I still have 2 of my BookTube prize books left to read before this Thursday. In that sense, my reading has been going well. In terms of my reading as well, I put on Twitter about how I think I'm becoming more of a snob when it comes to books. I wanted to go into that more, and I don't think I want to create a separate video for that. So basically what I mean is, when it comes to these very highbrow literary books, such as Girl, Woman, Other, when I read it last month, or this month, I read Girl, Woman, Other at some point within the last 4 months of this year anyway. When a book like that comes along and it wins the Booker and it's getting all of this praise and it's making its way onto a lot of shortlists, it's being talked about a lot. Indeed, I've seen Bernardine Evaristo's name appear in the acknowledgements of tons of books over the last few weeks. I hold that to a different standard than I would hold a book from the fantasy genre or a middle grade genre. When it comes to my book snobbery, I'm often keeping in mind what the author was trying to achieve and the genre of the book, the style of the book, and where I fit in. Like, I'm not going to compare Girl, Woman, Other to The House on Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. I'm not going to hold those books to the same esteem. I think about them separately and differently, but I am snobbish when it comes to certain types of books. I admit this. I can think that a book isn't as good as another book, but the book that I think isn't as good, I could still end up favouring more than the book that is seen as fantastic by so many other people. Again, this comes down to personal taste, and I talked about it in my BookTube prize rankings video. I also think with a book like Girl, Woman, Other, like these very popular books, I do hold them to a different sort of standard, and I will be more critical of them. Naturally, with that book, I could have ended up enjoying it more than I did. I think that it was a bit too long for me, and I began to notice flaws in it. And I've talked about this all in my review discussion video about it, so I will leave a link to that somewhere. In this video as well, I talked about how I was upset, concerned, overwhelmed by the fact that I wasn't writing and that I haven't been writing. Indeed, I didn't even focus on writing for the last week again, but I have written something. I wrote it last night. It's only 3 pages, and I'm just allowing Errol to ramble. I've seen some advice from other people where they're like talking about when they can't think of something and just moving past it. So last night I did that because I really wanted to move on. And so a simile that I still haven't written, and that's going to see me Googling today just to try and figure it out. I'm lucky in that I had so many older relatives growing up. So I have quite a wealth of people whose experiences and likes and dislikes I can draw upon to inform my writing. This morning we've been watching is it called Talking Pictures? It's a channel that shows primarily older films from the last 100 years. I can look at that and I have these resources available that I can talk about things that Harold and Doris are going to know about. However, when it comes to similes and when it comes to discussing things that have been mentioned a lot in the past, I know that with Our Doris, I was trying to be very focused on niche people that you might have forgotten or that other people might have forgotten. Like in the chapter that I uploaded yesterday, Teeth, there is a reference to Richard Torber, and I can remember that coming about because my nan wanted me to find an LP of his for her, and she said if anyone was able to find one, that's what she wanted. And I was lucky that I was still working at Age UK. I found this LP and that became one of her birthday presents that year. And because I knew that name, I then took it and put it into Our Doris, and I hadn't heard it before. And I do this often, and some people will say to me, I'm surprised by the references you got. And I don't like to talk about the fact that it comes from having these older relatives and being brought up on hearing all these different things about what they like, disliked, you know, the tape recordings that they've got, the LPs they've got. And I suppose that whilst I don't like to hoard things myself, I suppose I am fond of the fact that my older relatives did hoard a lot of things, so I'm able to see their likes and dislikes and steal information for my own books. This has disappointed me somewhat with Doris Ahoy because I didn't do that so much with Doris Ahoy. I referenced Theresa May twice in there, which upsets me because I don't like to repeat the same joke. I wish I caught that. Also, there aren't as many references that I could have made. I could have made a reference to the Doctor films of the 1960s, you know, like Doctor in the House and that. And there are so many historic references of films and media for cruises that didn't make it into the book, and I do regret that somewhat. I am going to be doing a lot of work today over one simile, but I do this often. One of the reasons that these books also take so long is because I'm not just fact-checking, but I want to make sure that the books remain referential to parts of history that we might have forgotten. And although the book is set in the modern times, Harold does have 76 years worth of information and experience to be going off of, and I don't want to only reference things that have happened within the last 27 years of my life, which in Our Doris doesn't happen. There are tons of references dating back years, decades even, in this book, and so I need to continue that. And to be honest, I do it with all of my books. I don't know where this whole thing for referencing came from, but it makes me feel like that episode of Family Guy. Indeed, one of my descriptions in Indisputably Doris or something, I describe a certain character as looking like two characters from television shows of the past. And I just think about the fact that that is such a faux pas, really, in terms of writing, and it does break a rule. And yeah, these books were all about me allowing myself the opportunity to break rules. They were about having a character who's talking to the reader, who's having a conversation with the reader. It's only as I've moved on, I've tried to make them a bit more like novels and a bit more literary. But that's just because of what I want to do with the last book. And so I needed to tell a story that happened whilst Harold and Doris were on the boat, but I needed another character to tell it. So yeah, you'll see when you read it, unless my editor cuts it out. And trust me, I haven't picked an editor yet. I haven't picked one. Because at this point, we're 4 books in, I've had 3 different editors. I've had untold amounts of beta readers on these things. And frankly, I'm currently furloughed. That was, yes, that was something that I also wanted to talk about. Last week, I received my first paycheck as a furloughed worker. And the amount of money I have earned in the last month whilst furloughed is not that significant. Indeed, I might struggle to pay my rent. Therefore, I'm going to have to be incredibly shameless and just say that if you know of anybody who might like my books and has the money that they could purchase them, then please do point them in the direction of my books, which I leave the links to in the description, Or if you were able to donate a small bit of money, I do have a Ko-fi page that I also keep in the description. Originally, this was for me to help towards publication costs of the next book, whatever that may be. But currently, it's just to help me pay my rent. This isn't to say that I am unhappy with the fact that I am currently a furloughed worker. I know that a lot of companies are going to be struggling over the next few months. Indeed, I know a lot of people are currently struggling as well, and I don't expect you to donate anything if you do not have the money. I don't expect it to be thrown at me. That's why I'm suggesting you might be able to purchase one of my books from my own website as opposed to Amazon, who would take too much for me to be able to actually get anything out of it. Also, they don't pay me until 2 months down the line. So if you could maybe send people towards my website to purchase one of my books, all of my books, that would be incredibly helpful at this moment in time. I hate to say that I'm no good with money, but I am no good with money. And so I could have actually mentioned this when I was first furloughed 5 weeks ago. However, I didn't anticipate the huge cut in my wage that there would actually be. I know after speaking to Dane of Dane Reads that I will be able to post things and I can print off labels and just stick them into a post box. So there should be no issue with getting stuff to you. It might take a bit longer than usual, but please, if you're able to help at all, do consider it. I've mentioned I am reliably poor. It's just that I'm a bit poorer at the moment. And in reference to people saying about me purchasing books, I haven't bought that many books at full price this year. I get a discount through Foyles and through Waterstones due to being a member of the Society of Authors, and I have been incredibly lucky to have family members who didn't buy me anything for Christmas who have given me the money for the books I have purchased and called it a gift. So, also, I didn't know coronavirus was going to come around, and I know that I'm not supposed to talk about that. No, this is to go back to Italian and to go back to music as well. In my last video, I talked about this singer called Emma, who is an Italian singer. And there is a song on one of her albums that I found, I can't remember what it's called now, but it was bringing me a smile to my face. Every time it came on, just the build-up and the way the music was, I thought, oh, this is a really nice, lovely, happy song. I happened to actually focus in on the lyrics, and with a bit of me knowing some Italian, bit of Google Translate. Do you know what I found out? This song is not actually as happy as I thought it was. So I've been there recommending this certain song to people. I don't think I mentioned it on here, but either way, I've been talking about this. It's not happy at all. She's talking about hurting herself because she's in love so much. There's talk of death and eternity and flaming heck. Maybe, actually, I was just thinking whilst I was sat here, that's quite fitting. I'm very dark-humoured, so the fact that someone's singing about hurting themselves and death and love and all that, and how they coalesce and exist with one another, it makes sense that that would make me happy. I just realised that. I finally watched another episode of Lock and Key, and it was good. I still enjoy the show. It's nowhere near the darkness of the graphic novels. I haven't read the graphic novels myself, I just know this from reading, because I remember everyone saying how this was a horror series of graphic novels and how the imagery could be somewhat dark, and it was a creative decision on the writer's part to dampen this down for television so that more people could view it. I can't remember where I read that, but I do know it is not as dark as it could have been. Sorry, I can hear children outside. There was this awful thing yesterday where I was just trying to read in my bedroom a terrible poetry collection that I'll talk about at a later date. And I'm just there trying to read and enjoying myself. And some fool who has moved in somewhere behind me in that direction, not only have they got dogs barking at all hours of the day and they were screaming because these dogs got into a fight, but then they started singing. I'm not sure what they were singing. I don't know whether it was karaoke. I don't know what was going on. But, Lord, I was praying he'd get laryngitis. And I don't pray. Non-religious. That's how bad his singing was. Also, I'm hearing that people aren't paying attention to lockdown measures currently. And all I can say to that is that you're somewhat foolish. and that I am not fear-mongering. I won't be leaving my house to shout at you, and you might not have caught it yet, but you could easily end up being asymptomatic and giving it to somebody else. So maybe what England needs to recognise is that this is not a time to be selfish. We have spent a lot of time becoming a selfish country, selfish people only thinking about ourselves. And whilst we might idolise certain people, and we might say, well, I went and visited my gran last week, so that shows I'm friendly and good with community. It doesn't. Going to your doorstep, clapping for the NHS and for carers and all that, great stuff. That doesn't mean you still get to go to the park because you did your bit and you clapped on your doorstep. Don't be an idiot. Don't be a fool. Stay at home. Enjoy yourself. You spend 365 days out of the year, ordinarily, talking about how you never get the time to do anything you want and how you just wish you'd get to spend time at home. And now, you're on the internet talking about how you can't cope with having the kids at home, even though you spent time talking about how you never get to see them because of work. Now you can't bear to be around them because you've realised they actually talk too much and you don't get on with each other. You're talking about not having time to catch up on TV shows. You've got all time in the world. This isn't a blessing. This is something of a curse, but it isn't going to last forever. It's not going to last that long in the grand scheme of things, but you continuing to leave your house is going to mean it lasts somewhat longer. Just have a bit of forethought, be a bit kinder. That's all I ever preach. If I ever became a preacher, if ever I became religious, that one thing is the only thing I took from the Bible when I tried to read it. Just be kind. Be mindful of other people and be kind. It doesn't take much. That horrible thing you want to say to me right now, I don't need to hear it. Chances are, you've not said anything to me as bad as what my own family have said to me in the past. I have a thick skin. My grandfather was a rhinoceros. That wasn't for everybody. That wasn't for the general public. That was for anyone who chooses to be foolish, because Lord knows that at my age and with this haircut, I have no time for fools. I am going to disappear. I hope you're well. What you're reading, what you're writing, what you're watching, what you're listening to, let me know in the comments. I hope that you got something out of this video besides sheer boredom. And until next time, that is all.